We have a truly exceptional guest for you tonight. As you will see, it's hard to know where to start with Michael, but fortunately he's written an absolutely captivating memoir about his life. And of course, on the cover of that book is a picture of Michael as a very young man with his extraordinary mother, Geraldine Fitzgerald. So as you are about to find out, ladies and gentlemen, this is quite an extraordinary person, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you Michael Lindsay-Hogg.
It's very tough to follow an introduction such as Eddie gave me. Of course, when he said he worries about bringing kids of some of the actors onto the stage, I had this picture of little 6-year-olds running across. and I think if that were the case, you're smart.
Exactly. Can you watch a film like this and not see your mother on the screen, or is she always your mother?
That's stumped right at the beginning.
Well, it occurred to me as I was watching the film, I wonder what Michael is thinking right now. Does he see Mom?
Both.
Or
both. I think she has some wonderful moments in the picture. It's a very weird movie. With some sort of unintentional humor, I think, and then the great duo of Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. My mother is particularly fond of Peter Lorre. I don't think anyone who is a connoisseur of actors could not be impressed by what an extraordinary actor he was. He's the acting equivalent, I think, of a baseball pitcher who throws a knuckleball. You never quite know where it's going to end up, but it always ends up in a good place. When I watch it, yeah, you know, it was, oh God knows, 60-odd years ago. My mother was 32. I remember thinking she was 32. I loved her very much, especially at that. I didn't see her very much because she was always at Warner Brothers. So it brought back memories. But then I also see the performance, and I also think some of those scenes, her villainy was very well delivered, and especially her anger, which fortunately I didn't come my way too often. I mean, if it had, God, it would be bad. But her, I thought she was very, very, very good in that. So, yes, my mother and also an actress.
When Alan was giving the introduction to the film, he mentioned that this was something of a follow-up to the Maltese Falcon. But to go even further than that, John Huston actually developed this screenplay before he did the Maltese Falcon, and it had sat around for a while. And your mother was originally who Huston wanted to be cast as Bridget O'Shaughnessy in the Maltese Falcon, and not Mary Astor. So in a way, and Huston was at one point going to actually direct this movie until Jean Negulescu got the job. But I'm going to go way out on a limb here tonight. I am a Dashiell Hammett acolyte, and I am going to state that I really think that Geraldine Fitzgerald would have been the ultimate Bridget O'Shaughnessy. And I present Three Strangers as evidence of that she is so spectacular with those two other men in this movie. And just what you talked about, the villainy, and there's a little unhinged quality that comes through in that performance that would have been spectacular for Bridget.
Yeah, and listen, Geraldine Fitzgerald, Bridget O'Shaughnessy, I mean, that's made in heaven.
Exactly.
Actress in part. Yeah, there was a bunch of kind of renegades in Hollywood at that time. Humphrey Bogart, John Huston, Bette Davis, my mother. My mother's a great friend of Bette Davis. Who were all drinking, staying up late, and having affairs and all the things that people do. John Huston did want my mother. My mother was always fighting Warner Brothers, Jack Warner, who had behaved meanly to his contract actors, and especially to the women. The studio didn't want her. Huston did want her, and then there came this weird little extra fillip that came in. John Huston had a romance with Olivia de Havilland, who was a great friend of my mother's. And my mother felt when he talked about the part that maybe she should turn him down because he hadn't treated her friend that well. Now, in Hollywood, people treating each other badly is not unknown. And people do have romances, and they don't end up the way you'd like them to. Look at the couple in the movie tonight, any of the couples, really. But I think she would have been wonderful, but then she said, I don't want to do the part, and then the studio didn't want her, and that's when Mary Astor came in, who I think had just, her very scandalous diaries had been published about Mary Astor's affair with George S. Kaufman, and that made her a very hot property, kind of like a sober version of Lindsay Lohan or something like that.
And no offense to Mary Astor, who's fantastic in the film, but your mom, wow, that would have been something else.
It would have been great. I agree with you.
Yes. Well, now you have broached the subject by mentioning affairs in Hollywood, and I'm not sure, because Alan didn't touch on this in the intro, and I don't know how many people who are in the audience tonight are aware of, you know, your lineage, and how there's murmurs and things. It's absolutely fascinating, and you know where I'm going with this.
I'm guessing.
At what point in your life did you begin to suspect that your father may be someone other than who you thought your father was? Let me phrase it that way.
Yeah, that's good, Eddie.
Thank you.
Well, it's all in the book, but I was 16, and I just started working as an actor, which is not a career that I prospered in. And I thought the name Michael Lindsay-Hogg was not going to be of much use if I wanted to act, since people couldn't pronounce it and spell it. And I was working on some names on a little pad, thinking, well, maybe I'll change my name. The year before, I'd met Orson Welles when he was directing King Lear in New York and playing it, and my mother was in it as well. He was very nice to me, and we formed a kind of bond. I was only 15 at the time. So I had this idea, who would I call myself? Michael Sokolov, Michael Guger, Michael Smith, and then I write Michael Wells, and I think that might sound good. So I go down to my mother and I say, I think I've got it. She says, what have you got? I said, my stage name. And she said, yeah, what is it? And I say, Michael Wells. And she said, well, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. And then I say, gee, what? And she said, well, it's just that when I came to America first, and I was acting in the Mercury Theater with Orson Welles, some people think that he and I had an affair and that he's your father. What? And that's where it began. I was 16. I wanted a career in the theater, and it was a rumor which was around a long time, and I wrote the book, and what might be interesting to various book readers is there's a bit about my mother. There's Hollywood, there's my mother's friendship with Bogart and Betty Davis. I did a lot of rock and roll work, which is interesting because I've got a good memory. And then at the end of the book, it's like a mystery story. And you don't realize, I mean, I was like the agency who was telling these stories because they all happen. And you don't really realize, as the book's going on, that it is turning into a mystery. And the mystery is, I suppose, of this person, me, who tries to find out who his father really is. And then by the most extraordinary coincidence, I finished the book, and then this coincidence occurred, and then it seems that this coincidence verified that story.
I do want you to tell one story from the book, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough, because Michael has a great gift as a writer in memoir for writing his life story as though it's a movie. And it's beautiful. You get these wonderful little glimpses, and it's told in a fabulously non-linear way, where he finds very smart, emotional ways to connect these passages from different points in his life. So I've never told that to you before, and I really think it's a spectacular book. And I do want to mention this one very funny story about when you started acting, and you were actually in a production with Orson Welles of the Chimes at Midnight that you were doing, when you sort of, he upbraided you a little bit because you had your 2 lines.
Well, it was more than having my 2 lines. He thought I would try to kill him. We were rehearsing Chimes at Midnight, which is a rehash of certain Shakespeare plays cobbled together, in London. And Orson Welles was playing Falstaff, the great fat character. So we're rehearsing in London. We rehearsed for 2 days, and then Orson goes to the director, a friend of his, and says, I have a terrible toothache. And the director said, oh, my dear fellow, you should get it fixed. You should go to the dentist. And Orson said, yes, I could go to the dentist. And he did go to the dentist. The only problem was the dentist was in Rome. So we didn't see him for 2 or 3 weeks while we were rehearsing. I think he was trying to slot in another movie on the side or something. And so we eventually, we're rehearsing the play. And the only time we ever rehearsed the play in scene order was the night before we opened, which went on for 24 hours. At a certain point, I was playing a character who was meant to rush on from the wings with my sword out and seem to kill Falstaff, who then pretends he's dead because he wants to not have to be actually killed, so pretend he's dead. Okay, so it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, the north of Ireland, on the stage of the Opera Theatre, and I'm standing in the wings waiting for my cue, and Orson is not really paying too much attention because he's trying to learn his lines from a copy of the play he's got in his hand. And so rather than really paying attention to what's going on, he's just sort of wandering around the stage. And so then here's my cue, and I come rushing on with my sword out, and I've been told by the director to say, aye, meaning I'm a dangerous assailant and I'm trying to kill him, so I say, aye. And I miss him by not very much, because he's turned and is turning up. So I actually miss him by like 6 inches with my steel sword. Then I run off into the wings and think, well, I've done my bit well, and I said aye, and I'm obviously a very fearsome character. And then I hear this big bellow voice saying, I don't care when it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Belfast in the north of Ireland. I don't care when the sound cues aren't working. I don't care about anything, but when Michael Lindsay-Hogg tries to kill me, I quit. I think he was hungry. Because someone told me that a roast chicken had been delivered from the hotel a few moments before this encounter. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning he came back and he seemed to be very jolly. Maybe a glass of wine had been delivered with the chicken. And then we were friends again. But I didn't try to kill him. I don't know why, he's a great man.